Welcome to another episode of the Fresh CrEd Podcast. Today, we're excited to have Mr. Lorren Walker, President and CEO of Elias Walker, former Chief of Staff at USDA Ag Marketing Services. With a stellar career in agricultural policy, Lorren has been pivotal in ensuring the safety and vitality of our food supply. In this episode, Lorren shares his journey from starting in food policy at 18 to his current role. We'll explore the importance of connecting schools with fresh produce, complexities of the Farm Bill, and the role of effective advocacy in agriculture. Special thanks to our sponsors for this episode: Cactus Packaging Supplies, Equifruit, Corner Image Packaging, Sunfed, and IFPA. Recorded live during IFPA's Washington conference, this conversation provides unique insights into agricultural policy. Enjoy the show, and don't forget to subscribe to the Fresh CrEd Podcast for more engaging conversations.
Today's episode is brought to you by our episode partner, Corner Image Packaging. Corner Image is an innovative, forward-thinking company that offers recycled, reusable, and sustainable products. Mike Ellis and his team listen to and understand how their customers do business, and every day they strive to provide them with the most economical and environmentally friendly solutions to their business needs. So if your business is in need of labels, print equipment, pallets, cartons, consumer packaging, and/or other packing supplies, contact Corner Image. Mike and his team also provide consulting and inventory management services to simplify your packaging material needs. So check out Corner Image Packaging at their website, Corner Image PKG. That's cornerimagepkg.com. Check them out. You won't be disappointed. Excited to be here with Mr. Lorren Walker. He's President and CEO of Elias Walker. He is also the former Chief of Staff of USDA Ag Marketing Services, and I believe you were quickly promoted into, I believe it's the regulatory programs, one of the missionary departments underneath. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It was called the Marketing and Regulatory Program Mission Area, and that kind of encompasses all of the things that are under marketing, as well as kind of plant and animal protection on the other side of the house. So the other agency was called the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Right. And so that's kind of the vehicle where we keep and protect both our food supply and our animals. We keep them healthy. And so both of those mission areas, I was promoted over those it ended up being a very challenging job, but a very good job and some work that I was very proud of.
Excellent. Now you've been in DC quite a while?
My entire life, actually. My entire life. I cut my first teeth in kind of food policy at 18 when I was at undergraduate. I went to undergraduate school here in Washington, D.C., and my parents were not wealthy, and I might have gone to the most expensive university in the country then and now. So I had to work. I had to find a job.
Right.
And I exclusively interned at a consulting firm that did ag policy. And in doing so, I never turned back. I never looked back. It was always interesting, and so food policy and fruits and vegetables is where I've stayed.
Gotcha. Well, I know you're here with IFPA. You just came off of a panel, and that's, you had some interesting topics in discussion.
Sure.
And the conversation there was really centered around connecting schools and children, with fresh fruits and vegetables. So, your experience and your knowledge here in D.C., I mean, you run a consulting firm now.
That's right.
What do you do for your clients with the government, and what can we learn as we're trying to work with the government as well?
Yeah, well, the firm does deal with things outside of fruits and vegetables. So we deal with banking issues, credit, so things that maybe a fruit and vegetable producer might need in order to be helpful, to be profitable. We also deal with some crop insurance issues. So if you have some damage, we have clients in that area, and I also deal with things that are outside fruits and vegetables, so grain and some poultry issues as well. But what we try to do is, synthesize what a problem is to a producer and make that translatable to members of Congress and/or their staff. And what I tell people oftentimes is, like, what you're doing here in Washington is not just telling people your problems. You have to do so in a clear, concise, and timely way. And that timeliness is usually the biggest factor. When do you tell a member you have a problem? So lots of folks come to DC and they think, well, if I just tell them and I got a great argument, that's going to resonate and that's going to solve my problem. When they don't recognize that to solve their problem, now might not be the good time.
It could be a long game.
It could be a very long game.
Yeah.
And I often tell people that if someone engages me or they engage my firm, we are not talking about a 12-month turnaround. We're talking about something that could happen between 2 and 4 years, and that's good timing. If someone brought me an issue right now that dealt with farm policy, that's a 6-year timeline, because I don't know when we're going to be done with this farm bill, and they're already too late to start an initiative. And so you might want to come back to me in 2 years and say, okay, let's get going. Let's have more conversations around that issue. So, there's some folks out there who might say that they can get these things done faster. If anyone's looked at Congress in the last, several years, things do not happen in a fast timeline. It's supposedly, the Senate is the most deliberative body in the country, and some might say in the world in terms of legislative business. There's a reason why it's deliberative, and there's a reason why things kind of take a long time to put into action when you come to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Can you touch on, just for the folks listening and watching, maybe a short rundown of what all is involved in the Farm Bill?
Yeah, so the Farm Bill has 12 titles. And those 12 titles do a multitude of different things. So there's a commodity title, so think row crops, grain, wheat, corn, soybean. And then there's also kind of the horticulture title, which is where IFPA does most of their work. There's also a trade title. There's also a crop insurance title. So there's multiple different areas where influence in the Farm Bill can take place. And you've got to understand kind of the tempo of when those things need to be talked to on the staff and what staff they are and why they're worried about it. And quite frankly, if there's other opportunities seemingly outside of your title, but might actually have impact on some of the things that that your growers and your members are interested in. So that's generally the Farm Bill. Then you have kind of what people refer to as the four corners. So that's your Republicans and your Democrats and the House and the Senate. So all those individuals have to kind of coalesce on what their priorities are. They usually have to exchange what those priorities are. We're not doing a very good job of that right now. But in doing so, that's how you kind of get to what most folks regard as a bipartisan approach. So that Republican and that Democrat on the House side, that Democrat and that Republican on the Senate side coming together and saying, okay, these are the things that we can coalesce, and we'll just argue about some of the things on the side. We're not doing that right now, but those are some of the nuts and bolts of the Farm Bill, those 12 titles, getting them all, trying to work in all the issues, trying to solve problems that might have occurred in the last 5 years since we renewed a Farm Bill, or 6 if we're talking about this particular Farm Bill cycle, or 7 if we're not careful. But trying to do all those things and then coming together and saying, okay, here's a package. What does the public say? What do stakeholders like IFPA have to say about it, and all their individual members? And that's kind of how the process unfolds.
And once it's finalized, there's no, obviously it's a lot to coordinate those 12 components, right?
Yeah.
There's no amendment until the next Farm Bill, right?
There are some fixes. So but they're usually small.
Okay.
So it's
There's allowance for that.
There is allowance, but it's very rare
Okay.
that you have any major component that is changed in the Farm Bill. It's usually additive or iterative, or you have something that was a mistake and we kind of fix it along the way. And that's sometimes done in the appropriations process. So I'll give you an example. On the credit side, there is a provision that removed how much a lender gets charged for making a loan to someone. While the rate and the range of what USDA can apply on charging was way too high. And so that industry got really concerned. And annually, since the last Farm Bill, in appropriations process, they've been basically editing how much they can charge to lenders as a part of making those loans. So that's something that can happen. Other things kind of big, think a few years ago where the Inflation Reduction Act actually edited some of the Farm Bill activities, and that is usually, that's an anomaly that hasn't happened in a very concerning way, in a very large way, and that has taken some of the motivation for people to get a new farm bill done, because so much was done in the Inflation Reduction Act on farm bill activities, and that's why it's not done. So you want to set farm policy so that it's consistent. So you don't want changes, because farmers need consistency when they're going to plant. The only thing they want to evaluate every year is the weather, right? Whether or not it's going to rain or not rain, or rain too much.
Yeah.
If there are programs out there that are supposed to help them, they want them consistent. They want them
Predictive.
predictive. And so, things like the IRA, in some cases, were good for some producers, maybe not so great for other producers. But there's some things that I think that are in there that affected the Farm Bill. But there's also the rationale, to your earlier point, why we don't do those in the middle of a Farm Bill cycle, because that disruption can do two things. One, it could stop some of that predictive responsiveness that USDA can have, and it also can lessen the motivation for members of Congress to do anything more if they feel that they've already achieved their goals in mid-Farm Bill cycle.
Cactus Packaging Supplies, your premier choice for quality packaging solutions in South Texas. As a wholly owned subsidiary of the renowned Mexican company Cajas Agrícolas, they bring over 4 decades of expertise and innovation in packaging, design, manufacturing, and distribution to South Texas. Founded in 1979, parent company Cajas Agrícolas has been a trailblazer in the packaging industry. Their extensive experience spans the agricultural, livestock, and industrial sectors, ensuring that they understand the unique needs of each market. This rich legacy empowers Cactus Packaging Supplies to deliver products that not only meet but exceed industry standards. Whether you require robust packaging for heavy-duty applications or specialized solutions for more delicate items, they have you covered. Join the family at Cactus Packaging Supplies, where they believe that their success is driven by the success of their clients. They are committed to building lasting relationships and providing unparalleled support to help your business thrive. For more information, email sales@cactuspack.com or call 956-369-2055.
And I want to really talk about, and I'm very familiar with the length of time it takes to get anything done.
Sure.
I started coming here in '99. We were working on WIC at that time, trying to get as part of the WIC program. It took at least 10 years
That's right.
before that ever got accomplished, which
Yeah.
is amazing to think. But that being said, now we've moved along. We've got WIC. We've got as part of the SNAP program. We've made some definite progression, but we still are kind of missing the mark, particularly at the younger age of school systems, through the food banks, things like that. So I'd like to understand, from your perspective, what are the things that maybe we're disconnected on, right? What is it that you've seen done that didn't pan out, or you were surprised by, or something like that?
Yeah. So I think, one of the changes that I've seen for the good that's happening in the special crop community is the level of advocacy and the timing of the advocacy. Kind of going back to those first things I talked about.
Right.
So we were doing a lot of yelling, but we weren't doing it in a clear way, and so the opportunity for changes weren't resonating. And what we see happening now is very consistent, very timely, and concise ways of approaching members of Congress. Our problem happens to be right now is that Congress is so tight. There's so few Democrats, there's so few Republicans, and usually one way or the other, dependent upon what you're advocating for, you can get you can get that ball across the finish line. But because there's such contentiousness, that's really slowing down progress on a multitude of areas, one of which is some of our priorities when it comes to nutrition. You have people who are making issues divisive, and that's not a positive way of looking at things. We have folks who are actively attacking other members. The quorum is deteriorating. It's my hope that we will get back to a higher level of respect and conversation, and not always demonize. I'll give you an example. So there is conversation around what some folks call SNAP restrictions, and I think what folks who are trying to restrict snack. I think what they're trying to do is increase nutrition levels, increase health results. But we're so quick to demonize the individually that we lose focus on, well, what is the end goal? And can we find a pathway with that person who I might not like to advance higher nutritional products and have them more available in areas where they might not have been available previously. And so it's all a matter of looking at what someone's saying, not demonizing what they're saying, but actually trying to find the pathway to get to a yes. And we're forgetting how to get to yes on a lot of these conversations because it's easy now with Facebook and Twitter and X and all these other vehicles to just say, well, you're not being helpful, and so I'm not going to be helpful for what you're attempting to accomplish because it might be a negative on what we're trying to accomplish.
I guess here's where what baffles me. Baffled me during the WIC
Sure.
program, and it baffles me. And honestly, I can probably tell you why I think it is, but we're talking about fresh fruits and vegetables,
Sure.
right? So farmers, and connecting that with the young people of our community, the people in need, the people that don't have good access to food. We're talking about giving them fresh fruits and vegetables. How in the hell can that be divisive?
Hey there, CrEd heads. At Equifruit, they are committed to changing the banana industry. With Equifruit, say goodbye to hazardous working conditions, unfair pay, and gender discrimination at the banana farm. They deliver everyday high-quality bananas with farmers and farm workers as a first priority. Equifruit has 100% fair trade, women-owned, and a B Corp. Follow Equifruit on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Equifruit. It's the most badass banana brand on the planet.
Well, I gave an example earlier when I was on the panel where I had a client who was in an oversupply situation, and they utilized the levels of government that were available, Section 32. So what they call bonus buy, but it's really a relief program when someone's in an oversupply situation. Worked it out with government officials, talked to food banks, food went out. They were immediately, once knowledge of that procurement activity occurred, they were immediately demonized because they sold folks luxury goods. So in some ways,
Fresh fruits and vegetables, luxury goods.
fresh fruit and vegetables and tree nuts were associated with luxury items. I'll give you an example. So at Christmas time, there's wonderful companies who provide boxes of fruits. Sometimes they have lovely golden foil around a pear.
Yeah.
Someone has decided that that's a luxury good and not just something that can bring you nutrition, increase all those good components, brain activity, and that's the conversation that we have to have, is that these are essential, these are not luxury. We should be providing these because they're essential for nutrition, not because only the rich can afford them. And so that's an argument that we have to make, and that's an argument we have been making. We've been, again, clearer about that, removing some of that stigma that only these things should be purchased by only these individuals. I mean, we're not talking about caviar. We really are talking about things that, not too long ago, folks could go and pull off a tree and feel comfortable eating them. Those environments may not exist for folks in the urban areas, but we have to be able to talk about these things in a way where it resonates with members of Congress and they don't associate some type of negative connotation with being able to provide it to folks who may not have the resources to do it on their own.
So, all right, I'm going to take it down a path.
Sure.
And so I went to school completely different in my era, for sure, different food pyramid and everything. But I bet today I can go into any school and there will be some dairy, there will be milk.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
I will bet in that same school there will likely be access to chips.
Sure.
Right? I wouldn't bet that I could go in every school and bet that there would be fresh carrots easily accessible for the students. Is that fair to say?
I think that's probably fair.
And so my I guess conspiratorial. At the end of the day, I think so often, and that's kind of the thing that frustrates me, is it comes back to the amount of money that gets spent in the city. Is that also potentially fair to say?
Yeah, but I'd also say that it's also about the amount of time that people have focused on how government can assist other areas of the food supply chain and make sure that it's accessible. Dairy has been one of those things since literally the turn of the last century. We have been talking about and attempting to help dairy producers provide that nutritious thing to individuals who may not be able to afford it. So they have been more ingrained in the Farm Bill. As was said earlier by another of my panelists, fruits and vegetables has only been in the Farm Bill for 25 years. The first instance of when fruits and vegetables really had a concerted spot in the Farm Bill was the Specialty Crop Competitiveness Act of 2003. Wow. 2003. So that's 21 years ago when that bill was passed. That translated into 2004 Farm Bill, where it was put in the Farm Bill. And then we really got going where people were saying, okay, well, maybe we need to pay attention to specialty crops. Maybe we need to pay attention to fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, not just frozen or canned. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but paying attention to that fresh market. That was the first time something was really done. Then we go to 2008, and now we're off to the running. So now we're up to speed where you're talking about where we were.
I think it was 08 when WIC finally got approved. And
that's because of that work that was done in 2003 and 2004 that kind of led up to the 2008 initiatives that really got the Special Crop Farm Bill Alliance motivated. It really advanced the two organizations that are now one in IFPA. So those are the things that are new. Dairy's been there for 100 years and more than 100 years. And so that's the reason why you see in these nutrition programs, entities like that who have, a much more staying power because they've just been at the table longer.
Well, and then, continuing along those lines. So, you're going to have milk there every day.
Sure.
Why is it such a stretch to say we're going to have carrots every day? We're going to have a list of items, and that is just part of the procurement process. I mean, why would that not be a workable solution?
Well, it's infrastructure. It is understanding. So if I don't know how long a bad carrot can last, because there's no label on when it expires, unlike milk, then how, as a food nutrition director, how do you easily translate that to making sure it gets out to kids fast? There's got to be a concerted effort from that director in order to want to procure that item that's going to be more expensive, not maybe go as far as another product, and then want to hand it out. Whereas, again, not demonizing milk, but they're a good example of something that's a staple that's been in schools for a very long time. There's an expiration date. So those food directors, that lunch lady, she doesn't have to do much in order to figure out, when and where to get rid of that product, and not get rid of it, make sure it's consumed by that young person, by that child, by that student. That's not necessarily the case on the fruit and vegetable side. In addition, culture is important. We have made milk synonymous with everyone, except for some folks in our country who have dietary restrictions. We do respect those, but largely we have made it synonymous with every single person in every walk and every area of this country. We haven't done that with fruits and vegetables. I'd venture to say
it was a very successful marketing campaign. For a long time.
Yeah, got milk, right? So of which those those marketing programs I actually oversaw at USDA. So you have that environment that is there for them, but as I was getting ready to say, there are varieties of fruits and vegetables that resonate in some areas and don't resonate in others. I mean, you take peaches and plums. There's peaches and plum people. There's also peaches and nectarine people, right? So some folks may not want that soft, fuzzy edge to their peach. They might want a nectarine that's more smooth. We got to understand where those people are and how to advance that product. We also have to do better on educating people on what this is and why it is. And I think that's part of the process. It's easy for one commodity with a few different grades of fat content to, go out and make sure that people are utilizing it. When you're 300 to 400 different fresh fruits and vegetables and other specialty crops, that's a little bit of a harder thing to do.
Right.
And so some people could be distracted on whether or not you're doing strawberries or blueberries, whether or not you're doing peaches and table grapes. So that's also the complication that goes along with advancing fruits and vegetables in programs that you've already outlined.
So you did have some success while you were involved, and I'm sure continue to have success, but you made mention of, I believe it was, at one point 300 to 500 million, you were given an example of how that's grown. So
so there are mandates from Congress that actually direct USDA to purchase so much fruits and vegetables as a part of Section 32, which is kind of this big animal that's divided up with funding that comes in to do kind of bonus buys and other procurement activities. Typically, the department would only get about 300 million, 350 million. They'd carry over some, but they really did not know either how or what foods were even available for them to procure. So we had a concerted effort of reaching out to commodity groups. The current administrator, who was the administrator when I was there, implemented a program where economists actively looked at the marketplace to see where there might have been declines in price, and then reach out to those groups to say, hey, you might be a product that may be in need of a procurement action to bolster that price. So those things were going on while I was there. But the biggest impetus really was the trade dispute that happened with China.
Okay.
And when everyone lost that market who had a 20% or higher tariff, now we really had to educate people, okay, well, how do we move this product from where we usually go in a foreign outlet? What do we do with it? And so that was a real advancement where we taught supply chains, we educated the food banks. Food banks made investments because they now knew these types of products were going to come to them so they could store them properly. Handling, food safety, all these things had to be put in place in order for the government to be able to procure these foods and then get them out to these outlets. And that was a real big impetus, making sure that the supply chain was in place, making sure handling was in place, and making sure that the folks who were actually going to get this product knew what to do with it. So I gave an example earlier about bok choy versus collard greens. There are certain communities of individuals in this country who isn't going to eat bok choy, and there's certain ones that aren't going to eat collard greens. And so which one goes where and why? Those are the things that even food banks have to figure out.
Your example was you actually gave out collard greens to one group and it was great, and then you gave out collard greens to another group and they threw them out of the box.
Right, they didn't know what to do with them. And the next week that particular distributor looked around, asked some questions, made the good decision, and all of a sudden, solution solved. A lot of that was happening in communities across the country in the previous administration, and that's why we are where we are now, where it's not a hard job now to get commodities procured. Now we're dealing with a funding issue, whether or not the funding is available. And we're also dealing with demand issue. Like we still have to drive demand. Like if you drive demand for these products, ultimately the funding will come along. They will tell members of Congress, hey, we want to make sure that our community of individuals has these food products available for them. And we've seen some evidence of that in some of the framework ideas that have come out of Congress, thus this Farm Bill cycle.
Okay. One thing also I'd like you to touch on,
Sure.
you made some changes in the way on the acquisition side. You talked about lowest bid policy. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the quintessential barometer to procure almost anything in government is lowest bid. That's been tried and true, particularly at USDA. There are other mechanisms that can be used, but that's the one when we're talking about food product that they went to. When we got into the pandemic and everybody's price was falling, we just had to procure food in a very quick way. And so we associated something that's called best value, right? And so we set up criteria. We didn't throw out lowest bid, but we set up criteria to determine what best value is. And based on what was available and based on where the demand was, we applied that best value and procured those items. And then they went out to those community of individuals who are in need. I still contend that there are some inherent issues with lowest bid when we're talking about fresh fruits and vegetables. If I've got canned protein of any sort, there's already value that has been put into that. It can sit on the shelf. If there's too much volume, if there's not enough volume, that it's going to fluctuate, and then that supplier can push that out. Fruit and vegetable suppliers don't have that luxury. There's only so much storage that you can do when you're dealing with a fresh product. And so having lowest bid when you might already be in an economically depressive state is not going to be a solution for someone who's seeking assistance from the government through Section 32. You have to use some other criteria. So that's the education that we're doing right now.
Hey gang, I hope like hell you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Fresh CrEd special edition coming from Washington, D.C. Guys, none of this is possible without our partners, so I want to take a few minutes just to give each one of them a shout out. I'd like to say thanks to IFPA, Equifruit, Corner and Image Packaging, Cactus Packing Supplies, Sunfed, and IFPA. And also, please take a second, if you're not already following us, to go out to our webpage and click to follow so you can catch all the episode drops and all the shows that we're putting out. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you guys soon.